What's going on, you guys? Welcome on back to the channel. Now, with ReZero done for now until August, I've been looking for a new anime that I could really sink my teeth into and talk about. And the anime that I keep thinking about the most is Black Torch. And the reason why I keep thinking about Black Torch the most is because this anime is genuinely so fascinating to me. Ever since it got announced, I have been so fascinated by the concept of this anime because this is an anime that is adapting a 19 chapter manga. That's right. Black Torch only has 19 chapters solely because it got canceled prematurely and the author never really got to tell their true definitive ending. So when Black Torch got announced for an anime adaptation and I found out everything about it, I have been just so fascinated to see where this anime could go because when I saw this, I'm like, this could essentially be like another Thousand Year Blood War situation where Thousand Year Blood War got rushed out, like well not rushed, but like Kubo was like dealing with illness and everything. So Thousand Year Blood War in the manga wasn't his true vision. But with the anime now, the anime is essentially Kubo doing everything he wanted to do in Thousand Year Blood War. He just didn't have the time or he wasn't healthy enough to really do that. So now he's getting to tell his definitive version. So that's what I think Black Torch is going to be. And that's why I was so excited to talk about it because Black Torch, like I said, I feel like it's going to be one of the most fascinating anime to come out this season. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about Black Torch and just why this anime is so fascinating. So, right off the bat, we start off in an interesting way, and that is we see our main protagonist, Jiro, talking to who I thought was his mother at first, right? Because the way like this person's talking, like you can kind of infer that they're very motherly towards Jiro, but that's when you get the reveal that Jiro can talk to animals, right? He's talking to his dog Nachi, who is honestly kind of like very motherly towards him. I like that a lot about Nachi as a kind of like a character. Like she's very important to Jiro and his overall development, right? Like the speech that she gives him at the beginning of this episode, where she's essentially just like, find like what makes you special. Like that's something that is carried on throughout the entirety of the episode and honestly forms Jiro as a character. So Nachi is honestly one of my favorite characters solely because of that and solely because of how important she really is to Jiro and his development as a character. But moving on from that, we then see a scene where honestly I could feel the Bleach inspirations. A lot of Black Torch to me feels like it's taking inspiration from Bleach, but none more so than the scene under the bridge where Jiro is essentially beating up like a gang and using his ninja skills against them in order to beat them. Like that to me felt like the most Bleach thing in the entire episode. But what was also very fascinating is I thought for some reason I thought Jiro was only going to be able to talk to Nachi because he kind of has like a deep connection with her because that's like his family dog and all that. So I thought he was only going to be able to talk to animals that like he really has direct emotional ties with. No, he can talk to literally any animal. That's also what's cool about Jiro. He can talk to any animal. So like when you see like the cat and the bird show up and they just start having a conversation, like that was so cool. I loved that. I thought that was such a fascinating like twist because on one hand you think like Jiro's ability is just going to be able to talk to like animals that he has deep connections with. Here, that is just not the case, and I love that. Now, moving on from that, we then see Jiro go home, right? And you see him talk with his grandpa, and his grandpa just like goes ballistic on him. Now, his grandpa to me, I feel like is a very interesting character because like I read a little bit of the manga, so I know kind of what happens with Jiro's grandpa, and I feel like he specifically is going to be what gets expanded on because in the manga, if you haven't read it, like skip out on this part, but if you've read the manga at least up to like chapter 5, like Jiro's grandpa is kind of like he's there, but his impact is very like brief within the manga, right? And then, in my opinion, Nachi has more of a direct impact on him than his grandpa does. So, like, really, the only thing that Jiro's grandpa has going for him is that twist that happens in one of the later chapters. So, like, that's really all his grandpa's got going for him, in my opinion. So, what I'm most looking forward to is seeing Jiro and his grandpa. Maybe, who knows, they expand on that like in the anime and they make it like where Jiro's grandpa essentially gives him a little bit of a training arc, right? He learns more about the shinobi way. We get to learn more about that aspect of, Black Torch because I don't know if it gets expanded on later on in the manga, even though it's like 19 chapters. But I thought to me like Jiro's kind of shinobi aspect of himself kind of gets like brushed to the side a little bit during the manga. So I would love it if we essentially got like a training arc with Jiro and his grandpa because he shows him that sword, right? Like he shows him that sword that's from their clan. So I wonder if there's going to be anything like with that sword. Like maybe they add like anime original stuff to it. Like maybe they incorporate it into like the entirety of like the story as a whole and like retroactively make it more important. I don't know, but I would love to see something like that. I think that would be cool. Now, moving on from Jiro and his grandpa, where he absolutely bodies him in a fight, we then see like the animals come back, right? We see the bird specifically come back and lead Jiro into the forest because he found like a hurt animal. And that is when we essentially meet our deuteragonist of this story. This is where we meet Rago. And I don't know if this is like anime original, but when Jiro finds Rago and he starts calling out to him, like, hey, are you okay? Like, you see Rago be like, who's calling me? And then you get to see like this cool, like, whole little sequence of like the Mononoke talking to Rago, right? Like, you get to hear a little bit of what happened, like, in the interim, like before we saw Rago, and that's something that I don't think was covered in the manga, right? Like I'm pretty sure Jiro kind of just like came upon Rago and took him back to his house. Here, the anime I feel like expands on that a lot more, and you get to see a little bit of what happened to Rago in the interim. Like we even get to see a little bit of like how he got unsealed. Like you can clearly tell someone like like tampered with his like seal and all that. Like that's kind of like explained in like that little like flashback thing with Rago, in my opinion. So that's really cool to me. I like that a lot. But what I really liked too was like this shadowy creature that symbolizes Rago, symbolizes like the evil side of the Mononoke when he's talking to that other Mononoke that wants to utilize his power, right? He wants to team up with him. But Rago clearly does not want to do that. But why does this other Mononoke like feel like he needs to use Rago in order to team up? I don't know. I don't really know what could be going on there, but that's really interesting to me. But one scene that I liked so much, and I don't know if this is anime original or not, but the scene that I loved the most was when we have like this whole like dark scene of Rago's like inner turmoil, like talking to that other Mononoke, and then you kind of see like a sketch drawing a little bit, and you see Rago like on the beanbag in Jiro's room, like symbolizing that he's found essentially like peace and light. I thought that was such a beautiful moment because like Rago is a character that to me is pretty much encompassed in darkness, right? That's essentially his whole character. So seeing him get this little moment, even if it is anime original or not, seeing him get this moment where you get to see him like just be in the light and get to be just like a normal cat. Like I thought that was so nice. Like seeing him like eat the cat food that Jiro brings to him, like seeing him like get a bath from Jiro, like seeing them essentially bond throughout this entire section of the story, I thought was so good. And the bath specifically, that was one of my favorite parts of the entire episode because you see Jiro talk about Nachi more, right? You see him like when you see him talk about more of his past when he was a kid, where Jiro was essentially a kid that was bullied and beat up a lot. So whenever Jiro would come home, Nachi would ask Jiro to give her a bath. And that was essentially her way of helping Jiro wash away like the grime and the darkness of that day. And what I love so much about that scene is Nachi's like, how blessed am I that I can just talk to my owner and I can get a bath whenever I want. And she's essentially like, never take these gifts that you have for granted, use them to do good, essentially. That's what I love so much about Nachi, man. Nachi is a character that is so important to Jiro in his overall development. It's so unfortunate that Nachi like passed away before the events of the main story because she is a character that I feel like is going to grow more important as the story goes on. But she is another thing or another character that I also feel like could be impacted by anime original content where like I feel like we could maybe get more anime original scenes with her kind of extrapolating more on like Jiro and learning more about him before the events of the main manga because we only have 19 chapters to work with like in the main story. So I wonder if they're going to do things with like Nachi to kind of like expand on Jiro as a character and like add more layers to him. I think that would be really cool. But after we get that moment with Jiro and Rago in the bath, we see Rago like in that moment want to take off because even though him and Jiro have essentially been kind of like connecting and bonding throughout this whole experience, where like you got to see that funny moment where Rago learned Jiro can talk to animals, and you get that funny reaction shot, and you just get all these nice little moments. But in the end, Rago at this point in the narrative still views himself as just a Mononoke. So he leaves Jiro, jumps out the window, and you can tell he can tell that he's not as strong as he used to be, even though like Jiro has tended to his wounds very well. Like he's still not 100%. And that's when you find out that Jiro was just waiting for him to show up. Like, and he just used like a substitution jutsu and left like some, I think it was like a plush or something in his bed to like substitute for him. That was so funny to me. Like, that's another thing too, where like you feel like the inspirations of different manga, right? The mangaka for Black Torch clearly was inspired by things like Bleach and Naruto, and he incorporates them into his story and makes it like very like cool to me. I like it a lot. I like how he uses it. I like how he uses it in unique ways and not just kind of like copying or anything like that. Like it's very easy to fall into the tropes of the manga that have come before, but he's doing things in a unique way that I like a lot. But you see Jiro and Rago start to talk, right? You see Rago essentially threaten to rip out his windpipe and use it as like a scratching post because Rago just wants to get away from Jiro. And that's when the Mononoke that we saw talking to Rago in like, I guess his mind space, like he finally shows up, right? We saw him lurking before in one of the previous scenes, but now he's here and he's here to get Rago. And what I like so much about this scene too is right off the bat, before like the whole fighting starts and all that, you see Rago like jump off and use like Jiro as kind of like a springboard and then starts running away. Like I think this is also an anime original scene. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I like so much about that scene is it's kind of like Rago in his own way saying like, please run away. Like, I don't want you to get involved in this. And then you see Jiro essentially start to like hyperventilate a little bit. He starts thinking about everything with like Rago. I think he starts thinking about Nachi too, and that's when he steals his resolve and he's like, no. And, like you can tell he's like, no, I'm gonna go save Rago. And that's when we get like Rago and the Mononoke running through the woods. Like you see Rago like ready to fight, and then that's when Jiro shows up, and he comes in with the sword that we talked about previously. That I still think is going to be important to the narrative later on in the story, but he uses that sword to slash at the Mononoke, and like, dude, here is when the episode just kicks into high gear. Right, this is like, in my opinion, the best part of the episode. Like, this is the moment where we see like Jiro like fight for Rago, right? Like this is where he wants to be able to save him on his own terms. And because he's like, if I can't save you, then what am I even doing essentially? Like he like this is why I feel like Nachi is one of the most important characters because Nachi has essentially informed like Jiro throughout this entire process. Like Nachi is the whole reason why like Jiro even wants to like save Rago in this instance, right? Like because everything with Nachi has now like shaped who Jiro is now. That's so cool to me. I love that so much. But dude, when the fighting actually starts and you see like Jiro uses substitution again, but this time it doesn't work. This time you see the Mononoke stab right through Jiro and essentially kill him, right? And this is when the Mononoke offers like Jiro as basically a sacrificial lamb to Rago and essentially offer him as a peace offering so that way like they can team up again, right? Like he's like, "Oh, I know you haven't eaten in a while. Here you go." But then you see Rago essentially be like, "I'm going to kill you." And in that moment, you see Rago make such an interesting and cool choice. He lets Jiro devour him because Rago in this instance, like, yes, he's stronger, and yes, he could have eaten like Jiro and gotten stronger. But what I like about this, and what I think is such a cool inverse on things like, especially Naruto and Kurama, like like in that instance, it was kind of like a forced kind of like rehab or forced like habituation. Here, you get to see Rago make that choice for himself. You see him like essentially choose Jiro as a vessel and like save him because everything that Jiro has done for him throughout the course of this episode, right? Like everything Jiro has done for him has changed him and touched him like in a way that he never thought possible for himself because as a Mononoke, like he thought he was just evil incarnate. But in my opinion, Jiro is showing him that there's more to life. There's more to who he is. He's more than just a Mononoke. And I feel like that's something that will be extrapolated on. But you see them fuse, you see Jiro essentially stand back up, and that's when the fight kicks it into high gear. And can I just say, the voice acting, top tier. Like, this is some of the best voice acting I've heard in a minute. The OST that's playing over this whole fight sequence with Jiro and the Mononoke is just fire. It really like elevates the scene as a whole. Because when I read this in the manga, yes, the art and the paneling was great, but I didn't have that like emotional impact during the fight. Here, I got it. Like it was so good here in the anime. Like they elevated it to a level that I didn't think was possible. Like it was such a good fight. But the best moment was when like you see Jiro charge up the punch by listening to Rago and essentially just one shot the Mononoke. That was so cool to me. I love that so much because it essentially shows how deep like Jiro and Rago's bond is already this early within the narrative. Like you can tell just how strong they're going to become as characters and as, essentially as a tandem. But then in that moment, you see like Ichika, the girl who was like in earlier in the episode doing reconnaissance. Like you see her show up, you see her essentially knock out Jiro, and that's when essentially this whole organization shows up. Now, we don't really know the whole story with this organization. Like, we don't know, like, essentially, like, if they're good, if, like, they're more in the gray, but they're clearly, like, trying to fight the Mononoke to some degree. But what makes this interesting is they essentially want to take Jiro to the hospital and kind of do experiments on him. So they want to learn more about him. They want to learn more about like this fusion between the two of them because this fusion could essentially like determine the fate of like the Mononoke and the world as a whole. And that's essentially where we leave this episode. Like for like with the introduction of Shiba and this whole organization. Like, and can I just say, man, this first episode was awesome. I'm sorry if I kind of like rambled and I wasn't like the most detailed as I could have been, but this was such a perfect episode. I loved it so much. Like when it comes to like first episodes, like they're very important to me. So seeing this episode really stick the landing, like I like that a lot. And it really just gets me excited to see what they're going to do going forward because like I said, this is an anime that is adapting a 19 chapter manga that was like it didn't end the way that the author wanted. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the changes that they make as like the story goes on. Like are they going to add more like anime original arcs to kind of like essentially elevate the material? Like I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do next. And next episode, I feel like is going to be even better than this. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. This is going to be a little bit of a new series for me, so I'm looking forward to talking more about Black Torch with all of you. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, and as always, I would and also, if you are manga readers, Black Torch manga readers, please like I would love discussion about this. So I would love to know like what I miss, if there's anything that I should know going forward, let me know. But with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. And as always, I'm going to talk to you guys next time. Bye.